Okay, so we've logged in, so we're good there. Okay. Oh, one thing I want to point out to you, I've just seen this alert when I log in that says they will not support Internet Explorer going forward. I don't know why, what the story is there, but all that means is you certainly can use Internet Explorer, but at some point, probably if things are glitchy and acting strange, you probably need to go to a different browser because they're not going to support it for whatever reason. So that means they're not going to, run updates, I guess, for that. So you could just use Chrome, that's probably the easiest thing. I think a lot of us already use Chrome, or at the moment, at least Safari, you have a Mac, you could use it. But just wanted to give you that heads up because I got some messaging about that. So I thought, well, if at some point we'll probably have issues if you use Internet Explorer. So what we're going to do first is click on this big green Add Class button, and we're going to start by creating a class. Now this can be a real class, this can be, just pretend class. It's really easy to rename it later or delete it. So don't stress about, this has to be just right. So click on Add Class.
I already have a class in there.
Let me see. Oh, did you use it in the spring or practice with it?
No, I don't think so.
Well, let's just delete that class since we don't know what it is. Then okay, and then click on try hold on, wait for a second, and then just click out. So we're starting fresh. Okay, so the first thing you want is your class type, and I want you to stick with standard right now. There is something called a master class that I'm going to talk about later. That is what you want to do if you have multiple sections, probably the same class. But it's also just sort of up to you. But for right now, for terms of practicing, I really want you just to make a standard class, and I'll talk more about the master class later. You throw in your class name. This enrollment key is actually a password that you are creating for your students. So that's how they can enroll into your class. So it should be very simple, like cat or dog, or I actually honestly always used to just say class as my enrollment key. Had the same for every section. There is some special code the kids are going to get. That's really, what ties them to your class. This password is just sort of an extra security measure. I have never had an issue of kids just trying to get into my class who weren't supposed to be in my class. So I wouldn't stress too much about this enrollment key. Now I'm going to talk you through about how how kids join your class and whatnot. We are looking at a data sync where we might be able to do all that for us. So we might have all your classes made and whatnot with the kids in it. We also might not. I'm still waiting. We're still trying to figure out all that. All summer long we've been working on that. But the worst thing that will happen is you just give your kids your class ID and password, which you're going to do with me in just 2 minutes. You'll see how simple it is. And they'll enroll. It's actually a really simple process. So I'm not sure exactly which thing's going to happen yet, but we'll let you know. So subject area, ages, you want to fill that in. You do want your class to expire. I would throw in maybe June 2021 for now. If you knew it was a semester class, you might do January 1st. We do need them to expire because we will run out of student licenses if we have a bunch of classes that haven't expired. So you do want to make sure you have a date that makes sense there. You don't want to say like 2028. Needs to be, within a year.
How do you have to put in that student ages?
I think it's more for their own data so that they have a sense when they're analyzing their market data, like, okay, we have a lot of middle school teachers using our product, or we have a, they get data from it. That's the only reason they want that. Yeah, I would just get close enough. So then you click submit, and you're going to get this screen that pops up when you click submit, okay? This is your class ID number. This is the enrollment key. So my little secret word there was just the word English because it was an English class. This is what your kids need to join your class, okay? So what I'm going to need it to join your class in a minute as a fake student. So what I want you to do is, and also I want you to know, the screen will go away. You can get to this information later. So don't ever stress when you're making a class, like, oh, I have to write this down, I'll never see it again. So what I want you guys to do, you can probably just copy and paste, but I want you right now to email this information to me. So I need these numbers, and I need your enrollment key. So if you can right now just write an start an email and send me that. And then in a few minutes, I'm going to use that to join your class. And I'll hear the dings when the emails come in, and I'll know. There's one.
So you could do this during your first class.
Right, absolutely. I mean, you could email them this information. You could write on the board. Yeah, and I will, I will know hopefully sooner than later. Like, I mean, kids need to know how to join anyway. Because something's going to happen where they're in the wrong class, and what's going to happen. Schedule changes, right? The first few weeks. So they do. They are going to get information on how to do that. But some of it might already be auto-populated for them. We're just not sure yet. But it's really easy for them to drop or join the class. I'm going to show you all that. Okay, so Marilyn, you got yours sent to me, right? Okay, so then you click continue. And now you're in your class, or not in it, you can see your class, sorry. And I want you to see this little number is that class ID number. So really easy to, if you ever need to find it again, which you probably will. If you forget that enrollment key or you want to change it, if you click this little gear icon right here, you can jump back into that page and change it. So then I want to show you on the kids side what this feels like to enroll. So if you give them that information, this is what the kids interface looks like. And they have all their classes listed, so they don't have separate accounts. Like they just kind of plugged into everybody's class. And initially they have this enroll in a class button right here, but they also have this tab. It takes them to the same place. So they click on that, they put in your number, they put in that key. That's it. Click submit, they're in. Very simple process, not hard, okay? So that's how they get in. And then I want to show you, and then here's their class that they're in and their instructor's name, and they can have all their classes listed. And then I want to show you a couple things they have that's just on their interface that's not on yours. They have this what is plagiarism tab, which has got lots of information. It's just throwing them to plagiarism.org. So if you wanted to go to that site and explore or look around or assign them something specific to look at, that's there. And then they have a citation help tab that's all just resources about citations. So that's just a resource there for you, probably more relevant, for like an English teacher. So then this is how they submit. They click on the class name, and whatever assignments you create will be listed here. And one thing that's kind of neat is it creates a portfolio for them, because they'll all continue to be listed and they'll be chronological, and then they can they can always kind of go back and look at work really easy. It doesn't get lost as the way that handing back work gets lost perhaps. So what they do is they have their assignment, they see all this information about the start date is when it's open for submission, when they're allowed to submit. The due date of, of course, when it's due by. The post date is when they can view your feedback. So when you're setting this up, they just all have to be chronological. Like you can't have a post date like before your start date or whatnot. But this post date, all this can be changed because initially, you don't really know when you're going to finish grading it, right? It might be the kind of thing where you don't care if they see it immediately as soon as you've graded it. Your post date might be the day it's, after it's due. And it may not be anything to see for a while, but, they have access. Or it could be something where you really specifically don't want anyone to be able to see your feedback until a certain day. So the kids see that on the front end. If you have a rubric assigned to it, they can also preview the rubric right here. It'll just show them the rubric if you have one. So then they click the submit button, and it will auto-populate their name for them, but they do need to type in a little submission title, and then they choose from their computer and just navigate, to that file, wherever it is on their machine. And they do get this confirmation page. They get this confirmation page, and this is for them, hopefully, to realize if they selected the wrong thing, because if this was, as many of our kids, if this was Untitled 57, it might not be the right document. It might really be Untitled 58 is what they need. And they're not very organized. That's a very common thing they'll do is they grab the wrong file. So this gives them the chance to realize they've grabbed the wrong file, hopefully. But the other thing is you will have a couple kids at the beginning who think they've turned it in at this point. and they just X out. So again, they're going to get training from me on this side as well, but if you've got a kid, you know, if you're just trying to help a kid troubleshoot, you might, you know, say, well, did you confirm it? Did you click confirm? Because then they get a big green band at the top that says, congratulations, you did it. So if they didn't see the big green band, they didn't get submitted. They also get an emailed receipt like this that says you turned it in. So if a kid swears up and down they turn something in, they ought to have something like this to prove it, okay? So, you know, you just tell them try it again. So then after they've submitted it, the blue submit button is a little muted, not as bright as it was before, to kind of signify to them that they've turned it in. And they can click on this view button to see your feedback. And I'll show you a little bit later what that looks like more. But now I want to jump back over to you guys, and I want you guys to add an assignment for me. So you need to be in your class, which I think you already are, but if not, you just click on your class title. So I'll go ahead and do that. And now you should see a big green add assignment button, and we want to click on that.
Can I ask you one quick question?
Yeah.
So let's say, you go ahead, Ms.
No, I'm just talking to myself.
When they log on for the first time, I will not have had to enter them or anything. Because they're a student in a class, they're going to see their classes.
Hopefully.
That's what you were saying we're working on.
Yeah, hopefully. If not, you give them that code, they join it. Like, it should be a really simple process. So, but it
Oh, I
does.
see, because I created the class. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah. So what may happen? So what may happen? So hopefully we're going to populate where even you go in, all the classes are made for you. If that doesn't happen, then you're going to know how to make your own classes. So kind of going with that. And also there may be situations where we get like this big data sync, but then my understanding is like that's kind of it. Then we manage it on our own. So there will be things where kids switch classes or whatnot, and so you'll need to be able to manage that. And or we have a kid who joins MUS, 3 weeks in, you need to know how to get them in your class.
So I would start with them by going, you need to go to turnitin.com.
Yeah, so they'll have their accounts.
Okay.
They'll know about their account, they'll know how to log in, or at least have been given that information. And then, yeah, you would just say, here's the information to join my class. Okay, so now let me show you, your screen looks different right now. So hold on what you've got. I want to show you this screen. So you're making your first assignment ever. So you're skipping this step because there are things that happen here only if you already have an assignment. So I want to talk to you about it. So you have a regular paper assignment. That's what you're geared to make right now. It's all you can make. Once you have a paper assignment, there are kind of like add-ons to that original assignment. So one of those would be a peer mark assignment. So if I've already turned in a paper to you, I can assign a peer editing peer mark assignment. So this would kind of layer on top of it. So one of my next steps for this would be, which paper does this go with? And that will take all the papers, and you have a lot of control over, does it randomly give them to kids? You can pick which kid gets which paper. You can make it anonymous if you want. It's not anonymous to you. And you can assign, like every kid's peer editing 3 papers, and you can give them special questions they have to answer to guide them to be better peer editors. It's all integrated, like, and, say, what, the strongest part of this paper was, or whatever, you can steer them. They also can kind of highlight and put comment bubbles like you can. They have kind of a limited interface. So that's just a tool if you wanted to do some peer editing and have the computer manage it for you. And then on your end, you can see everything. You can see what everybody wrote on everybody's paper. So if there's any goofiness, you can identify it. So that's one add-on. Another add-on is a revision assignment. So you can create a paper, and maybe that's just the first draft that you're collecting. You don't want to make a whole new paper assignment for that second draft. You want to make a revision assignment. It's going to toggle it with that paper. It's going to organize it together. When you are grading, it's going to let you quickly toggle between versions. So I know, especially for essay writing and whatnot, and you probably, if you've ever had them have to revise, you'll tell them to fix something and they don't fix it. But then you're like, did I tell them? I think I did. Now you can see, yes, I did tell them. It's right here. You can click and toggle between the 2 versions, which is really nice, as opposed to having it as a whole separate paper assignment. And then the last thing that you can add on is a reflection assignment. So that would be, we wrote this paper, and then I've assigned, write a paragraph reflection on your process or that kind of thing. So those are all add-ons. So you don't see it at this time because you don't have a paper, but going forward, this is the screen you will see. at this stage. So I just want you to know if you're making a brand new assignment, you're just clicking paper assignment. So now this is what you guys have. So the first thing you need is an assignment title. So go ahead and type something in, and please don't overthink it. It can be anything. It could be, you know, essay or whatever. And choose a point value.
Like what percentage of a test it is?
It's more total points. So like they're going to get 10 points for this, or 100 points, or however you typically, yeah. And then this part right here, I think by default, I'm not sure which one is by default for y'all, the top one or the bottom one?
Top one.
The top one, okay. I really think probably what you guys are, I mean, it depends. So here's the thing. If you click this, allow only file types that can check for similarity, mostly that's going to be just fine. But if they try and upload something different, it won't let them upload. And so, you know, there's a lot of things that it'll accept. And most of the time, if you're signing an essay, it's going to be a Microsoft Word doc, right? Probably. But if you have a kid, so it says PDF here, but this means something that's been converted from Word to PDF. Probably they convert it back to Word on their back end. If the kid does what we did in the spring, like take a picture and upload it, it's not going to take it. That's the thing. So if you think for any reason kids are going to might give you handwritten picture of work kind of thing, you want to allow any file type. And it doesn't hurt. I mean, in my opinion, I always just click allow any file type. So I would much rather get something than it wouldn't let me turn it in. You know what I mean? If they gave me the wrong kind of thing, I can see what they gave me and I can talk to them about like, well, I need you to send me, you know, the correct format. But if they just get that brick wall, then all of a sudden I'm not really clear on what's gone wrong. And they don't know. They certainly don't know this is the reason. They just say, well, return it. They don't get it. So then over here, you've got your start date, you know, when can they start submitting, due date. You actually can still allow late submissions, even if you have a due date. That's another setting that we'll get into in the optional settings. So do you know you can have a due date, and then it's up to you if that's a hard due date, like they can't submit anything anymore, or it can be open, but it will clearly be marked late, and you might give them partial credit or whatever. Or you might just want that also for kids who are absent, so that they can turn it in late. And you'll be able to make that call. You know, in the system, you'll know this was turned in after due date, but you know, like, oh, he was absent or whatever. And then the post date is when they can see your feedback. So for right now, the assignment you're doing right now, it's important that I can turn it into you right now. So you probably can pretty much leave it alone. The start date is like right now, probably by default. So I don't want you to play with these and change them really. Probably whatever default is fine. Because I just need to be able to turn it in. That's really the only important thing. And then you have optional settings. So I want you to click on your optional settings. Now, there's a lot going on here, but keep in mind, mostly what the default is going to be fine. And you can save, when you go through and do all these settings, you can save it as your default. So you don't every time you make an assignment have to like go through all this. You'll know like there's something you need to tweak. So the first thing is special instructions. And notice you have little blue question marks that you can click on, and those will give you more information about what each of these are, like if you forget. So don't stress too much about trying to write down everything I say or anything. So the special instructions are, you know, any extra directions you want them to see, you know, maybe about the requirements or, you know, resources they can or can't use. That would go there.
Could it be the essay question? Or is that?
Yeah, I guess it could be. Yeah, I think so. And you know what, do something, type for me right now a question, just so I can see on my end how it looks to the student, and so that I can share with you. So it can be either like, this is the question. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, but do that because I just want to double check on my end that it looks the way that I'm imagining. And then here's where you can allow submissions after the due date. So if I want, you know, absent kids or late work to be able to be uploaded, I can make that a yes. It doesn't, in this case, you know, it doesn't really matter. Similarity report, for now, go ahead and mark it as yes, just so that you can see what that is. But that you don't have to create a similarity report. Like I know that you, Maryland, that's not relevant for you because they are going to look all the same. You can just turn it off if you wanted.
Turn off the generate similarity.
Right. If you don't care about it or want to see it, you can just turn it off. You never have to deal with it. I mean, it's something that like you don't really have to deal with it anyway, like unless you click into it. to look at the data, but I mean, if you know, like, I have no use for that, you might as well just say no.
Let me ask you a question.
Mhm.
I just lost the page and had to get logged back in. Is there any way you can save what you're doing? Because now I've got to go back and put in everything that I did. So I don't know why I lost the page.
So you could submit and then go back in and edit if you're worried about it, but I think it'll be okay. So usually you won't go through all this. Like, you already will have your presets, and unless there's something you know for this particular situation is different. This is kind of you thinking in general what you do for your class, and then it'll save it going forward. And then I would make this the similarity report, if you're using that, which you probably would have more use for that. I would just leave it as a default, immediately first report is final. There's this other option where you can overwrite reports until the due date, which would be something where the kids could like keep submitting and trying to get better. And if you are, teaching them about plagiarism and coaching them and sharing reports with them, and that's part of the lesson, that would be appropriate maybe. But in general, the similarity reports are for you, they're not for the kids. It's really something where you want to keep on the back end. And you certainly don't want them trying to game the system of like, well, this has too much similarity. Let me mess with it. Now let me try it. Now let me try it. Like, I don't like that very much. I think mostly you just want to leave it on the default. And then here's some things, if you are dealing with similarity reports, and you, Marilyn, can just ignore a lot of this, is you can decide that you want to exclude bibliographic material so that it's not going to flag that as similar. You can exclude quoted material, so you can say anything that's within quotation marks. I don't want that flagged because it's, a quote that they're citing, and I would expect it. You can also exclude small sources. So you could decide, if you click yes, you could say, I don't want to flag anything that's, less than 3 words. Because there's going to be, the similarity report is just that, there are going to be similar things. Like the protagonist in To Kill a Mockingbird, a very common phrase that you're going to see in a million high school papers. So if you feel like you want to make the similarity report a little more funneled for you, a little more precise, you can play with some of this. And then here's a big one, allow students to see similarity reports. I would say no, unless you're going to really work with them on how to understand the report. Because what will happen is it will totally freak them out, because they're going to turn in a paper and this number will flash up next to it. They'll say like 35% or something, and they'll be like, oh, 35% of my paper is plagiarized. That's what they're going to think. And then if you as a teacher can analyze and see that some things are like the questions, this was a worksheet where there are 10 questions that are exactly the same and everyone wrote a 1-sentence answer. Well, those 10 questions are all being flagged and you get this crazy number like 60%, and they don't understand that and they just freak out. So it's just much easier, I think, just to put it as a no. I also think some of the mystery is good, that they know that there's something in the back end, because I would hate for them to submit something and maybe there is a little something that doesn't get flagged. I mean, it's not a perfect system, and then they're like, aha, it's not, infallible. I'd rather they think it's perfect because they've never seen, they don't see how the sausage is getting made. I put a big star on that. I would leave that as a no, unless you're really going to coach them and guide them with it and teach them with it. All of this, I would just check all of it. It's limiting like where it's searching for similarity. I don't know any reason why you wouldn't want it to search everywhere. So I would leave all that. And then you've got the rubric form manager. So here's where you can just click and choose a pre-existing rubric. I do want you to go ahead and click on this button that says Launch Rubric Form Manager. You can get to this from other places too, but this is your place where you can look more closely at what is in the rubric. You can make your own rubrics. You can duplicate these rubrics and then edit them. Some rubrics have scoring and some don't, but you can always add scoring. So the scoring would be when you're in the grading interface that you can just click. You click here, 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 here's the criteria where you land, and it'll do all the math for you, which is really nice. So that's where all that lives. We're going to talk about that a little bit more later. And when you get into the grading interface, I would say if you find one you like, it's nice to just duplicate it and kind of make it your own, because there's always going to be a little something you want to change. And most likely, even just the scoring, at least. Most of the pre-made ones don't have scoring, because that's something really you have to add on your end. Because if it's worth, 50 points, so this is worth 10, 8, 6, like you kind of have to figure that part out on your own. So for now, just grab, you can click close on the bottom right to get back to that screen you were at. And just choose any of those rubrics, just so that you see what a rubric looks like on the grading screen. Okay, there's also this ETS Eraider, and in the video, they make that look really cool. But my experience and some other people's experience has been that it really causes, it really is not that helpful. Because it's just a computer looking for stuff and throwing in suggestions that may or may not be relevant. So depending on your kids, that could maybe confuse them, but also you as a teacher, when you go into grade, you have all these purple comments. So now on top of grading your kids' work, you're kind of assessing the computer's work. So you're saying, is that relevant? Is that relevant? Is that relevant? Closing them out, dismissing some of them. Like I kind of felt like it just was kind of a waste of time for me. Now, one way that you might use it is if kids are submitting a draft, you could turn that on so they can see it. And that might just help them with their proofreading because it might alert them to areas they need to look at more, but there definitely are mistakes. Like look at this. It says blue whale, and it says article error. You may need to use an article before this word. Blue whale, blue the whale, blue a whale. I don't think so. There's never gonna be an article there. So some of your kids, I mean, maybe some older high school kids could filter through that. If I gave this to a 7th grader, I think they would like totally, their heads would explode and they get really confused. So honestly, my recommendation is pretty much to just leave it as no. You can play with it and try it out yourself if you want, but and you obviously would want it to be no because it's Latin. It's just going to go totally crazy, right? Right.
So just in any of this, does it recognize that it's not English?
I don't think so. I mean, it's still going to look for similarity if you have that turned on. Just at what's, you know, the internet has lots of things that are not English on it. You know, scouring the whole internet.
I have a problem with or they part it too. If they're writing something like the Latin word for client is client, so if you write client, it's automatically going to change it to client.
Right. Well, this isn't a word processor, so it's going to take whatever they turned in. It's not going to change anything. Yeah. So then notice you have this little check mark. Would you like to save these options as your defaults for future assignments? So I would click that, and then going forward, probably you don't have to look at any of that again, unless you decide you want to make a change. Once you've been using it, you might decide, you know what, I thought I wanted it this way, but I want to change the setting. So then you click submit, and you have an assignment, okay? And you can see the paper and all the little data on it. And to get to your students, you don't have any students yet, right? You would just click view from the assignment to see what's going on. So right now, this says like 0 1 submitted. So we're going to come back to that. I do want to kind of remind you on how we would assign this on I'll have Blackboard. I'm going to change that to LHub. Do it right now. We're all going to have to work hard on that, on making sure we say LHub. So make sure, remember, we're signing everything from LHub. So you can't expect kids to like go to their Turnitin account and discover this assignment there. You would mention Turnitin in your title. So the phrase Turnitin can be confusing, right? Because Turnitin is also a phrase you use, like turn in your work. So the way I thought of phrasing it is summer essay due in Turnitin. So now they know where it's going. And then I would go ahead, I know it seems silly, you know, I can't give you a direct link to that assignment, but just give them the link to turnitin.com, at least in the beginning. At some point you may feel like that's not necessary, but as much as we can just let them click to where they need to go, the better it's going to be, the more seamless it is. So if you give them that link, if there's any confusion, it also just eliminates any excuses, right? You can't tell me you didn't know where to go when I gave you a direct link there, right? So I would encourage you to do that. So here's what the students would see then. Here's my assignment. When I click into it, I have the link right there, turn it in. So there shouldn't be any confusion about where to go or what to do. So now for you to grade the work, you would click on the class title. You're probably already in the class right now, but just knowing like grading work, you would go in there, you would click view is how you would get. And one thing I want to point out to you, once you have students in there, there's this little response. So this is showing the assignment. Here's my little pencil to grade. This will show me if they viewed your feedback or not, which is kind of cool. This turns into like a little person icon, so you'll know if they ever even looked at it, which I found. So I taught English for years using Turnitin. That was a very illuminating tool, and that was great feedback to give parents when they asked me, you know, about how they were doing or why they weren't doing well. I'll say, well, they're not looking at any of the feedback I give them. That's probably why they're not improving. And then, like I was saying, you click that pencil to actually grade the work. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to join your class, and I'm going to turn in some work to you. And while I do that, I want you guys to check out this handout I'm going to give you. And once you've got some work, I'm going to want you to kind of work through practicing these little steps. So this is all the different ways that you can give feedback in it. But first, I've got to actually give you some work. So let me jump on.
I'm getting a message.
Okay, so you have work now. I joined your class and all of that. So when you are grading a paper, which I want you all to jump this paper, and you might have to refresh your browser or something like that for me to appear. But you know, if you're starting from the beginning, you can go to your class, and you may already be in your class right now, and you click on View. Then you're going to see me now, and that paper I turned in, you click the pencil. So I want you guys to do that. Make sure you can get that. And then you're going to get into this interface, okay? So you only have one student right now, but if you had more, you can click this arrow up here to go to the next one. You can also click this arrow to just jump to different specific students, like it would list all the kids. And you can type in the grade here. If you had a rubric that, you know, has values in it, it would auto-populate. You can always override it. So all the blue is the grading interface, and all the red is the similarity stuff. So like Marilyn, you can ignore the, I don't even know if you have it, you might have turned that off. But the blue, this is where you can leave, you know, different kinds of feedback or deal with the rubric. So that handout I gave you kind of walks you through each type of thing, starting with how you can like actually mark up the paper. So I want you to start by just kind of moving through and practicing these different things, and just, you know, put gibberish in there. Don't stress about what you're putting on there. And then let me know if you get stuck on it. Now that you have had like a feel for it, one was, this won't relate to you so much, the Similarity Report, what I gave you probably got flagged like 100%, because if you even looked in there, because it's been submitted to like 50 people. It probably said it came from MUS. But I just want to show you, I actually went online and took an essay I found, tried to change it up a little bit. I did, like I wrote some of my own sentences, I threw in some synonyms. I just wanted to kind of show you like how it identifies that, how it flags things, and then, you know, obviously you kind of have to interpret. But this is a great, if you do run into a situation where a kid has copied, showing them this is a huge learning opportunity. Like showing them, helping them really visualize, like, you know, some of them really do think if they changed up a little bit, they haven't, I mean, that they, especially the younger ones, they haven't plagiarized. They don't get how they're just feeling, you know, the ideas, and I think this kind of helps with that. For kids, I want to show you how it looks to them, viewing your feedback. They have a really similar looking interface, which is less options. If they can, here's like a video I want to show you where they can pull the little comments, and notice how it's still tethered to whatever you highlight. So that's one reason you might want to highlight, because if they move stuff around, they can move stuff around if it's not tethered. If there's a lot of comments on there, I would do a lot of tethering. They don't get confused. And then they can view their rubric. And they can, you know, you see kind of a limited view of it. They get the big view of exactly how you scored them in each criteria.
Catherine, I've really enjoyed reading your paper. You have a very strong thesis, and I think this is a great start. The main area that I want you to work on is bringing in more examples from the text. The examples you have right now are great, really strong, but I think that you can find some more pretty easily to support these points. Also, don't forget to work in some word-for-word quotations to help support that. So I think you've got a pretty good balance right now with your own words and the textual support, but when you bring in more examples, make sure you don't forget to also bring in some quotes.
Okay, so for me, that felt like 2 hours. So it's 35 seconds, and you can actually record up to 2 minutes. And I think that also, yeah, here's the standing tool. I think this is underutilized, and I think it can save you a lot of time. You can say in 30 seconds a lot of information. For me to sit and type that up and wordsmith it would have taken way longer than that 35 seconds. So this is how it feels for the kids. I think it's always important for us to see like what is their experience. For your grade book, the best way to go this, it's not going to shoot it into OwlHub, right? But here's the best way to approach it. Click on your class, click on View, There is like a gradebook tab like in Turnitin, but you do not want to look at that because that's going to be like all their papers will know. You just want to look at this assignment. So click on view, and you're going to have the name of your kids, and you're going to have their grade, and then you pull up your Owl Hub gradebook, just put them side by side, minimize your screens, and you just transfer over. So really important you have a class for each section, right? Or else you do not want 3 sections alphabetized in a gradebook that's separating them out, right? You want to be a really clear, easy transfer. So that gets me to talking about a master class. So here's what a standard class looks like. That's what we made. Here's what a master class looks like. What that means is if I'm teaching different sections of the same thing, I can create that and then have my separate sections. Now, it is kind of set up a little bit for colleges and having a TA. That's why I keep saying my name. If I were a TA, when you set this up, you are the TA. You just put yourself in there. But it kind of has a mechanism to give someone else access if you have TAs. So I have a handout for you that's all about how to make a master class and how that works, because I feel like, it's not something that you want to mess with right now. Right, so you don't want to create a master class. But also, I told you we may be creating your classes for you. I'm kind of a little fortunate on it and a little bit wait and see. Definitely by end service, I can tell you like how you're going to need to set it up or not. I also need to talk to them about what it's going to look like on their end as far as master classes go. So there's that. I also want to give you this little handout is just a reminder on how to create an assignment. So we did that together, but you're not going to be creating an assignment probably for a few weeks, so you might want the reminder. And also about what all the little settings are and tips and whatnot. So and then of course I am working on building out teacher resource pages where like a copy of this will be, a recording of the training session will be, so all of that and these handouts, all of that will be there, and probably new things as well. And once we get going, there's always stuff that I don't really anticipate until I get like help tickets about it, and then I always try and make a handout so that it'll apply to other people. So do know that there'll be more things, like there'll be a growing resource that you can always look at. Job questions about anything?